people. Welcome. My name is Sammy Castonguay. I'm very excited to be here on behalf of the Friends of the Owyhee. We are a conservation-driven organization out of Ontario, Oregon, that is very focused on conservation advocacy, stewardship, and recreation in the whole Owyhee region. So I also work here, where I'm joining you from, at Treasure Valley Community College. I teach the winter astronomy course. And as sort of a dual interest, right, the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network is really trying to promote this really dark area of Eastern Oregon, dark night skies, as a potential dark sky reserve. And so being that I have both interests in night sky stargazing and in conservation in general, we thought that this would be a really good opportunity and program to pull all those things together. So if this is the first month that you've joined us, we had our first in February, and then in March, and then of course now in April, and we'll continue to do these in the middle of the month throughout the year, I think, because this has been so fun and so successful. And if you're joining us again, thank you for the feedback that folks have given in the past. That really means a lot. It really helps to improve the presentation, to improve the logistics, as well as to know that this is valuable, okay? Well, very good.
Your microphone.
Let's see, I think there's a little bit of audio feedback on one of the, if you could go ahead and mute yourself, that'd be great. So what I'd like to start with is talking a little bit about making stargazing a successful adventure. So the first probably half an hour of slides really focus on generating this, generating a good stargazing experience for you if you're new to this. So as I mentioned, I teach astronomy at Treasure Valley Community College, and so many students, when they come into the class, you know, maybe they know the Big Dipper, or maybe they could identify Orion, but a large component of this class is to re-invoke a sense of awe about the night sky, as well as curiosity about the constellations. So I work really hard with students to make stargazing a practice that can be successful. It doesn't have to be hard. You don't need a telescope. You really don't need any gear other than personal gear to keep you safe, and that's what we're going to go over. So you'll find that a large portion of this presentation is really just trying to encourage you to have a good time stargazing with you or your children or community members that won't scare people away from wanting to do stargazing. Then we'll also talk about making this a successful practice by setting your awareness and your intention on what you're going to do, as well as setting up processes for success. Okay, so what I mean there is, you know, if you're going to play basketball and you kind of need to know the positions, right? If you're going to play on a 5-person team, you need to know some of the rules of the basketball court, as well as some of the skill. So in this part, we're going to really focus on those process components, so you have an exciting stargazing experience that doesn't seem to be hard or unpracticed. And then I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about dark night skies and the importance of reducing light pollution or maintaining light pollution at a low level, and how the idea of dark sky preserves internationally and globally are really setting the tone for this idea of trying to maintain this very valuable resource. And then lastly, the new topic this month is I want to take you a little bit through the Zodiac Constellations, or as I've written here, the Zodiacal Constellations. Somebody said that word to me once, in reference to the Zodiac constellations. And I really like that word, zodiacal. Now, it's only a word I've heard from a few astronomers. I'm not an astronomer myself. I'm actually a geologist by training. But, you know, I've looked at enough YouTube videos and PBS videos that I don't hear this word all that often. But I tend to really like it, zodiacal, okay? So that word is in reference to the Zodiac Constellations. So when I say Zodiac, you might be thinking, oh, that weird astrology stuff, where people are taking the stars and imbuing these human qualities onto people, and that just seems like pseudoscience, right? I'm not going to counter that thought at all, but what I'd like to do is to make sure that you see the Zodiac constellations are a real thing. Okay, there are these constellations, Taurus, Gemini, Scorpius, those are all real constellations in the night sky. So when you hear those names, don't just think, oh, pseudoscience. Okay, actually, they're very important to the root of astronomy. They're very important for navigation around the night sky. Okay, kind of like a road through a state. So imagine the geography of Oregon. I'm just going to use Oregon because that's where I live. Highway 20 extends all the way from the coast of Oregon all the way across to the other side, to where we live, outside of Vail in Ontario. So understanding the geography of Oregon along that line gives you a good perspective of the geography of Oregon, because you drive the Coast Range, the Willamette Valley, the Cascade Range, and then of course the desert of Eastern Oregon. So similarly, if we learn the Zodiac constellations, which essentially make a line across the night sky, then that gives us a reference frame so we can learn the geography of the rest of the state. Okay, so the Zodiac constellations are actually really important to astronomy and to stargazing. Great. So here's just a couple of bits of gear that you might need for stargazing if you want to have a good, pleasurable experience. Now that the weather is warming up, you have less risk of freezing your tuchus off, okay? But I still don't underestimate how cold it does get at night. It might be, you know, 60 degrees, 50 degrees when you first start tonight, or say at 8:30 at night. But of course, the longer that you stay out enjoying the stargazing, the colder it's going to get. So this topic of wearing warm clothes is just as important now as it was in February, okay? In February, when I said this, everyone's like, well, yeah, if I'm gonna go outside, I'm gonna wear warm clothes. But now as I say this, you might be thinking, well, it's warm outside. I could probably get away with wearing a t-shirt and flip-flops while stargazing. But I'm here to suggest, if you don't wanna, you know, freeze your tuchus off, or even worse, if you're taking some children out, to impact their experience by them being cold. So please do dress warm with some, a hat maybe to keep in your head warmth and your ears warm, some gloves to keep your fingers warm, you know, a coat and layers to keep your core warm. And then maybe, you know, some pants or some leggings underneath to kind of keep your legs warm. And then of course, to finalize that with some boots and socks to keep your toes and your feet warm. So dressing properly for any outdoor experience is really essential. Okay, so dress warm. And then the next piece of gear that I would recommend, and it's by no means a necessity. You don't have to have a red light. But what is a necessity is to not use a bright light. So for example, we all have these awesome space phones in our pocket, and they have a flashlight on them, right? You know, there's an app for everything. So and I turn my flashlight on, and it's a big old blaring light. And that could actually reduce your night vision, so you won't be able to see the stars as clearly. So in order to counteract that, instead of using white light, which is, you know, the light that we typically use out of a flashlight, that's emitting all colors of the spectrum, that tends to overwhelm our rods and cones in our eyes, so we can't see as well. So to counteract that, if we just use the red wavelength of light, it's a lot easier on the rods and cones, so you don't lose your night vision. When you go outside to stargaze, it's best to kind of let your eyes adjust for about 10 minutes to the darkness without looking at any bright objects like car headlights or street lamps, or your cell phone, and letting your eyes adjust. And then if you are going to use a light, whether that's to write some notes in your notebook, or whether it's to use the Stellarium app on your phone, try to avoid using any white light. So that's why I recommend getting a headlamp with a red light, like this Petzl that's here, that actually has two different buttons, one for the white light and one for the red light. So that makes it really handy when you're gonna, you know, stargaze and just turn on the red light. Good. And then I also suggest, and I didn't bring in my physical star wheel today, okay, but I love these things. So this is, if you can see my mouse and my cursor here, the star wheel is a, it might seem like an outdated product because it's paper, but it's really not. This is incredibly useful anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. And if you just put one of these in your outdoor gear, then you never really have to depend on only your phone or batteries to help you navigate the night sky. So stargazing, just like I compared it to basketball earlier, keeping up the practice is really going to help you not just improve, but really help you hold on to these star names and constellations, and then of course share those with your friends. Using an analog method or something that's paper tends to help those ideas stick a little bit better. And I only say this kind of allegorically from my interaction with students, is that when we use the app and you stick your phone up to the sky and you're like, wow, there's that constellation. Oh, I see Virgo over there. It's really handy, but it tends to come in the eyes and then just out, right? When you have to maybe work a little bit more and kind of understand the star wheel and the movements a little bit more, people tend to stick with the constellations then. So I would highly recommend that you have some type of analog method to look at the stars, whether that's a star wheel or there's other types of products as well, even just a static image of the winter constellations, the spring constellations, and the summer constellations, that could help. Okay, but of course, I also recommend the Space Phone app. Stellarium doesn't pay me or anything to say that I recommend their product, but there's about a half a dozen or so, depending on if you're on Android or iPhone. There's different apps that are there for constellations or even planets or all stars that are really detailed and in depth. And I just have the most experience with Stellarium. That's what I use for teaching. It's a free and open source software for your desktop computer. However, the app for your phone is, I think it's about $3 for the basic app and maybe a little bit more for the bells and whistles, right? But really the $3 for just the basic is a-okay. Okay, really what you're going to use this for is while you're doing some stargazing and maybe you're practicing the things that I taught you tonight, you're going to be able to whip out your space phone, turn on Stellarium, and just check your answers. Okay, or if you go out maybe in 2 weeks from now and you're kind of foggy on some of the details about what we talked about here, then again, you could whip out your space phone and check it out a little bit and have the reliable method of checking your answers, okay? So again, I recommend the analog method and the star wheel, but I don't underestimate the power of having stellarium in our pocket. I think both are incredibly useful, okay? And of course, the last thing I'd like to suggest here is that you bring out some snacks or some hot cocoa. Okay, again, it's chilly outside, so some warm, liquid can kind of help warm up your guts a little bit while you're sitting there. And then more than the temperature of your body, or maybe, the sugar intake, whether that's snacks or hot cocoa, really having something to snack on or drink can kind of help calm your mind a little bit from the experience of if you sit down and you expect to, and you're doing some stargazing, you might, a lot of people anyway, I see this with my students, they tend to rush the experience a little bit, okay? And one of the big things that we're doing here is connecting, right? Connecting with the cosmos and looking at these burning balls of gas that are millions and billions of miles away, and doing something that our ancestors for thousands of years have done, which is look at the night sky. So giving the experience some time is really important. I found if I suggest taking a cup of hot cocoa or some snacks, or when I take those along with a class field trip, or even with my own kids, that makes the experience way more successful. You're going to want to hang out for longer. If you're drinking your hot cocoa, you're probably going to wait until you drink the whole thing. And that alone, 10, 15 minutes of just letting your hot cocoa cool down and drink it is going to be very valuable 10, 15 minutes that perhaps if you went out there without the hot cocoa or the snacks, you might have looked around and been like, yep, there's a star, there's a star. All right, I'm done. Okay. Again, I see that sometimes too. So to enjoy your experience, dress appropriately, take a red light so you don't ruin your night vision. Use a star wheel or a picture of the constellations or the app Stellarium to help you navigate. And then, to have an enjoyable experience, take some snacks or hot cocoa. Okay, I think that was a pretty good setup for helping you enjoy the experience. Now I want to give you a little bit more awareness details. How to set your awareness in space is really important. So cardinal directions, or knowing when you step outside, knowing which direction is north, and I'm going to point this way because that's north in the building I'm in, north or south is extremely important when we're talking about stargazing, because the constellations that you will see in the north will always be in the north. They're what we covered last talk, which are called the Circumfoller Constellations. Circum for circle, and polar for the pole star that's right in the middle. And those constellations are just going to spin around the northern hemisphere. That's a little bit different from the stars that are in the southern hemisphere, which do this big circle. So you only see these seasonally. But guess what? You're only going to see them in the south. Okay? So it is really important that you use a compass, or you could, of course, use your space phone to help you navigate when you get outside which direction is north, west, east, or south. And then try to draw some awareness to that. Wherever you potentially might go stargazing, just start paying attention to directions. And then that way, even if you don't intend to go outside stargazing, but maybe you're driving home from work late one night and you see the stars are out, if you can kind of navigate to what is north or south, then you will much more likely be able to navigate the night sky as well. Because let me tell you, these constellations, even though I'll show you how different they each look, it is surprising if you get turned around how much one constellation looks like another one. because they're all like little dots in the sky, right? So yes, finding north and knowing where north is very important. Setting your awareness. Okay, the next thing is setting your awareness of the season. We're in the spring season right now. So after dinner tonight, you know, say right about now, the stars that would come out in the night sky as the sun goes down after dinner, that set of constellations is known as the spring constellations. Okay, let me go backwards to January. Again, same thing. After dinner, as the sun goes down, the stars that come out in the night sky in January are known as the winter constellations. Okay, so these constellations are actually seasonally defined by the time of year that you would see them at night after dinner. Okay, so we are beyond the equinox, or the spring equinox. So we are in the celestial spring season, equinox to June 21st, or the solstice. We will see essentially the same set of constellations that are heading down the west horizon, and we'll begin to see some pop up in the east horizon, and that whole set we will refer to as the spring constellations. Okay. Also, it's important to set your awareness to the times when the sun sets or the sun rises. So say that I planned my whole day around stargazing tonight, but then I forgot that the sun doesn't go down until 8:30. You know, and I put into my plan that I'd go stargazing between 5:30 and 6:30. Well, that's obviously not going to work during this season, right? So that might seem like an obvious point, but I think it should be in your practice, right? This is about setting a type of practice for success in your awareness, is always pay attention to this time that the sun is setting, and that way you will know more regularly what constellations to go look for at what time, okay? Then also the sunrise could be important if you want to do some morning stargazing, which is very fun and very exciting to get up early in the morning. The world is so quiet early in the morning. But to get up early and go out and look at the set of constellations that's up in the morning. Because what's really neat is those that are up at, say, 8 o'clock at night, it's the opposite side of the sky that we'll be seeing rising before 8 in the morning. So you get a completely different look at the night sky. Again, they're not going to be the seasonal spring constellations, so I'm not going to review any of those that you'll see in the morning. But as you get into stargazing, morning stargazing can also be very enjoyable. Okay, then also you should recognize the phase of the moon. Here's a diagram of the moon phases over here from the waxing crescent, which we're at right now. The waxing crescent is kind of going on to full moon, and then it wanes away from left to right. So you can see here in these images, the moon waning away to the waning crescent. You know, the moon is a pretty big object out there in the night sky, and it reflects the sunlight from the sun, like kind of like a big mirror, and it reflects that sunlight back to the earth. So that light diminishes the opportunity to see all of the stars out in the night sky. Now, that could be important if you're trying to look at, say, nebula, places, small objects called nebula in the night sky, or if you're trying to see the Milky Way, or see some of the really fine detail that you might use binoculars for. The moon can be too bright sometimes to really be able to hone in on those things. But at the level of stargazing that we are looking at, a bright moon in the sky can actually be okay, because if the moon is brighter, then all of the small stars that you might see aren't quite as visible. So if the moon's bright and you can only see the brightest stars in the night sky, that tends to be the stars that make up the constellations. So the moon phase, just take note of it. I wouldn't say that it's a bother to stargazing. You can certainly still stargaze during a full moon. Okay, and also a new moon or a dark sky is also a very fun time to stargaze because it just looks like there's millions of stars out there, right? Fun fact, that if you counted all of the stars that you could see with your naked eye in the night sky, there's only about 6,000. Isn't that incredible? Now, of course, in reality, there's billions of stars out there, but I'm just talking about those you can see with your naked eye on a night in dark sky country, Oregon, okay? There's only about 6,000 stars you can see with the naked eye. I think that's incredible, okay? The last thing I'd like to recognize here is my hands, or maybe your hands. So do me a favor. I can't see anybody's camera, by the way, so I'm not watching you do this, but go ahead and extend your arm away from you, and extending your shoulder and your elbow out. So that way your hand is what we would call arm's length away, right? So it's not, you know, if I'm bending my elbow, then my hand is not arm's length away. So if I do that and I hold my hand out in front of me, there's a really interesting thing about the anatomy of the human, that for each of us, our depth perception and the size of our fingers and our hands and the ratio of our forearm to our humerus, all of these things are all about the same for every human, you know, about the same to within, you know, a degree of difference. Now, why that's important is that we can actually use our hand at arm's length away as a proxy, just a proxy, not exact, not precise, as a proxy for measuring the degrees of the night sky. Okay, this is really cool. And this is really interactive, especially for kids, right? Kids really, I mean, you got to give the kids something to do while we're outside. Looking at the stars is one thing, but to actually use this measurement implement that has been you know, given to you, you were born with it. Using these measuring implements can be a lot more fun. So I'm always reminded, I always think of the movie Moana. If you can't tell, like, I'm all about the kids, right? But in the movie Moana, it's a fairly recent Disney movie. It's Polynesian focused, and the Polynesian culture, the islands of the South Pacific, were very well known and are well known today as being extraordinary navigators of the ocean using the stars of the night sky. So there's a scene in that movie where Moana is using her hands to kind of make a measurement. And of course, Maui, the demigod, he kind of makes fun of her. He's like, what are you trying to do? Give the sky a high five? Because she wasn't holding her arm or her hand arm's length away. So that's actually very important. So 10 degrees is about a fist if you hold it away. So that would be between, you know, your pinky knuckle and your index finger knuckle. That's about 10 degrees. If you extend your fingers out, that's about 18 degrees. And then a finger for an adult-sized finger is about 1.5 degrees. Okay? And again, I realize that anatomically, we're all a little bit different. So your fist, your 10 degrees, the reason you can scale that is the size of your fist should also be a ratio to the size of your arm and the distance from your eyes to your hand. So it turns out that there's only maybe about 1 degree or 2 degrees of difference between people with really big hands and people with really small hands. So this can be really useful when you're describing the night sky, right? Say, let's go to Orion. And then if you go 10 degrees down from Orion, you'll see a bright star, Sirius. Okay, or I might say 10 degrees towards the horizon. Okay, so these, your hands and these measurement tools can really help focus your stargazing. Okay, now process. So we set our awareness, we're nice and warm, and now let's make sure that we've established a good process for success. Okay, where am I going to look? First, decide that. Which constellations are you going outside to look for? Today, we're going to look south. What do I intentionally look for? Am I looking for the constellation Pisces? Am I looking for the constellation Ursa Major? Okay, deciding what you're intentionally going to look at is going to bring, again, more focus to your experience. So again, with children, I would recommend that when you are getting ready to go out stargazing, that you generate a little excitement about what you're going to see, right? Maybe it's the planet Mars. And you can talk a little bit about that, build up a little excitement, and then maybe look around and look at some other things, and then finally get to Mars. So there's a little bit of anticipation there, okay? Then also, you can't underestimate preparedness. Being prepared on just like this activity here, I'm going to teach you something specific to look at tonight. So you will be well prepared tonight at 8:40 to go outside and to see these stars. So being prepared is also going to improve your experience. Then repeatedly look, focus on those things, and then practice nightly, weekly, maybe monthly at the least, right? That's again going to help you have a successful practice. And then it's very, what should I say? It's inspiring to come up with a new inquiry. So if you're just going about the business all the time and you're like, okay, that's what instructor Castonguay taught me and that's all I'm going to look at, and you don't generate your own inquiry, then it's not going to be as personal to you, personally exciting. So after tonight, after you look at the constellations that I've taught you, look at something else. And then wonder to yourself, or maybe write it down as a question, I wonder what that star is. I wonder what that star is. And the way that you can record that is by measuring with your hands from a known location. So for instance, there's going to be a mystery star up here in the southeast quadrant tonight that we won't really focus on. And it's about 35 degrees towards the zenith from the star Spica. Okay, that might all seem like gobbledygook at this point, but my point is you can measure that distance, record it in your notebook, and then go to your stellarium app or your star wheel, and you can figure out for yourself what that star is. Okay, and that's the real power of these stargazing methods, is for you to have the ability and opportunity to take a couple of these basic things that I get to teach you, and then to expand on that through the whole night sky. Okay, then I would encourage, just like a lot of learning, is to just slowly digest this stuff, right? Take one bite at a time, chew it well, right? And then swallow and digest. So in February, we went over a set of stars. In March, we went over a set of stars. And today we're going to go over a set of stars. So the idea is that you've been practicing that set over and over. And by now, you know it like the back of your hand, right? So learning one star or one constellation, or even one set of constellations will help your practice refine. So learn one thing before you move on to the next. Okay, oh yes, and I should recognize this book here, A Walk Through the Heavens. This is the 4th edition. This is an amazing stargazing book. So I'm not going to recommend a whole lot of books and literature. There's a lot of accessible material out there. But this book, this is where I learned a lot of the methods that I like to use. So they take some of the common constellations, and then kind of like a roadmap, you get to navigate from those constellations to the next one. So it's a really good way. I designed a lot of my class, my astronomy class, stargazing activities off of this book because it is so navigationally inclined. So if you're going to purchase something or check something out from the library, you know, where you're at, I would highly recommend this book. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the importance of natural night skies. So I'll just use this image to start your brain thinking about that. This is a image of light intensity on the surface of the Earth. The white colors are showing the highest intensity of light units, where the dark colors are showing the lowest intensity. And clearly here, the eastern seaboard of the United States, where there's most of the population of the US in most of the cities and most of the roads, and therefore most of the lighting and electricity tends to be very lit up, very bright. Where the further we get west of the Mississippi and the Missouri and into the Great Plains and over the Rocky Mountains and out here into the Great West or the Great Basin, you progressively get to larger and larger pockets of dark night skies. So here's the Great Basin, what would typically be referred to as the Great Basin. Then down here in the desert Southwest, there's a pretty dark pocket. Over here in Utah, pretty dark pocket. Pointing out some of these areas that are dark. In these areas, certain parks, whether these are state parks, whether this is an entire region of a state, like say over here in central Idaho, okay, this is a very dark area. Within this darkness and in collaboration with the International Dark Sky Alliance, folks, you know, very similar to me with conservation at their heart or astronomy on their mind, and wanting to assure our future generations that light pollution, like say the eastern seaboard, doesn't affect the future of this observational resource that we have at our fingertips. So the area or the polygon that's outlined in blue here, this would be kind of the very, well, here's Malheur County, the border with Nevada. This is part of the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. So I realize the polygon, of course, goes into Nevada, over here into Idaho, but there's folks here, residents of Oregon, that are really focused on advancing this idea in the dark counties in Oregon. So here's the logo, Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. We are lucky to have this resource. So like the gentleman joining us from New York City, you know, you're probably no stranger to being able to going outside and looking up at the night sky. But because of various things, whether that's light pollution or just the density of the sky, maybe with particulates, that there's very few stars that can be seen with the naked eye in larger cities. I've heard that there's about 6 visible stars in the depths of New York City. I mean, I'm sure that other times of year you can see maybe more, but in order to preserve the amazingly dark night skies, and we're not just talking about a little bit of darkness here. I mean, when you go out into the Owyhee in Malheur County, this is very, very dark. I mean, exceptionally dark, where on a moonlit night, you can still see the outline of the Milky Way. So we're talking exceptionally dark night skies. Let me go back to this map. In order to create these preserves, we're looking for the dark, dark, dark stuff. You know, this band over here of, you know, a little bit of light pollution, that doesn't qualify to be the core of these regions. You can have some of these, okay, but really we're focused on preserving the darkest of the dark. So us being very fortunate to have this with my children or my friends, and of course you or maybe visitors coming into the area to do astrophotography or just to enjoy a visible night sky. we think that this is an amazing resource for future generations that they should also get to enjoy. So the first step is to probably come up with some rules and regulations that we can all agree on around lighting. So here's an example of different types of lights. Some lights tend to shoot light all up into space, and nobody's going to use it up there, right? Where if we can instead put shielded lighting fixtures that actually put the light down on the ground where it's useful, rather than higher than we actually need the light, that can go a long way towards preserving the night skies and decreasing light pollution. Then there are areas such as Sun River in Oregon Oregon, but also
that's why I think you said only 10 minutes.
In central Idaho, and then various others around the United States and internationally have begun the formal process with the International Dark Sky Alliance to become designated as a type of dark sky preserve. So this is well on the way, folks. There are a lot of places that have identified that their dark night skies are important to them, whether it's their culture, whether it's maybe for a type of tourism, or just for the preservation of future generations. All of us can come together around this resource and this importance. Okay, I do want to make a note that we don't necessarily look at this as a tourism-driven opportunity. Now, we understand that there are astrophotographers around the world that want the chance to, photograph dark night skies. And perhaps, they need to stay overnight. So somebody flies into Boise and they want to go out to the Owyhee, maybe they're not big on camping. They're probably going to need to refuel and pick up stuff at Walmart and stay in Ontario, those kind of things. So we understand there's probably an economic relationship there, but we promote the Dark Sky Network out of preserving this resource for future generations. Okay. I'd also like to recognize that through the Ontario Community Library, very soon we will be offering a couple of these boxes that have been assembled by Travel Southern Oregon as a night sky box. So you can go and check these out, go out into the Owyhee and make a dark sky measurement. You can use the booklet for looking at different constellations and learn, this material that we're covering here, but going out and doing it yourself. Okay, so again, here's the very dark of the dark out here in Eastern Oregon. Great. Well, it's about the time. So after all of that, right, it's now time. I'm going to do a little bit of recap, but also give you a couple of new things to think about. Okay. So last month, we looked to the north and we looked at the Circumpolar Constellations, starting with a very identifiable constellation, and that's the Big Dipper. Okay. Actually, it's not a constellation. It's what's called an asterism. The full constellation is Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. So we took a look at that, and then we found the two, the middle stars around the bear, or you could think of them as the two stars on the end of the cup of the Dipper. And those two pointer stars, if you align them, they point directly to the pole star, or Polaris. So we looked at that for a little bit, and then if you extrapolate that line through Polaris and go to the other side of the night sky, down towards the horizon, you'll find a W shape, okay, in this season. But as things spin around the pole star, if you come out in the morning, you'll actually see Cassiopeia makes an M shape, okay? But either way, we used this method to find Ursa Major, find Polaris, and find Cassiopeia. Then I'd also like to go back to February. Way back in February, we used this slide to look at the winter circle. Okay, the winter circle consists of some of the brightest stars in the night sky, starting with Orion's belt, which is fairly easy to find. You can look at Rigel, Sirius, Procyon, Pollux and Castor, Capella, and Aldebaran. And that makes, it's kind of an oval, right? But that makes up the winter circle. Okay, and here was the stars that are named in that. This was the worksheet that I sent out afterwards. Okay, so the reason it's really important to go back to the winter circle is that's where we're going to start off tonight. So the zodiac, that's tonight's star topic then, right? It's very important in stargazing and looking at the night sky to understand this. I would say that it's a concept, but it's really a thing, okay? And that is the ecliptic. It's written right up here, okay? Not elliptic and you know, a lot of other confusing words, but the ecliptic, okay? What that means is the path, the line, the path of the sun makes across the sky. So during the daytime, you can make this out pretty well, right? The sun rises over there, it's over there at noon, and it's over there when it goes down, and you could probably make the arc. Now, during the night sky, it's a little more difficult to find exactly where that trajectory might be, but astronomers for a very long time, both ancient astronomers and modern astronomers have kept track of this very well. And we have then the zodiac constellations. So here's the ecliptic, okay, in tonight's night sky, and then constellations that are along that path in which the sun goes through are known as the zodiac constellations. So that's where the word comes from, you guys. Those, you know, the silly astrology signs, they're real. They're really out there in the night sky, and the sun travels through them once per year. The sun tends to be in each of those constellations for between 10 days for some of the shorter constellations, all the way up to 45 days for some of the longer ones, like Virgo that we'll cover tonight. It's a really big, long constellation. So the sun spends some time in each one of those constellations throughout the year. And thus we have the origins of the astrological perspective that every 30 days you switch to a new sign. Well, to tell you the truth, it's not 30 days, and there's not 12. There's actually 13 zodiacal constellations. And this, again, the sun spends between 10 days and 45 days in each one of those. So let's take a look at some of the zodiacal constellations that we've already talked about, we've already looked at. Okay, if we're here at the winter circle, so this is adjusted for tonight at 8:40, you'll see the moon, a nice crescent, 5% crescent moon over here. But if we go back to the winter circle, there's Orion, there's Rigel, Sirius, Procyon, Pollux, Castor, Capella, and Aldebaran. So here in the winter circle, you already know two of the constellations that are on the zodiac, and that's Aldebaran, the star, is actually known as the Eye of the Bull. Okay, the Eye of the Bull. And the bull is Taurus, the constellation. So right here is Taurus, and actually those horns, Taurus's horns, extend all the way up beyond the V of the constellation, all the way up here. Okay, so there's one zodiacal constellation. And then on the other side of the winter circle, the two twin stars, Castor and Pollux, the twins are the Gemini twins. Okay, so there's another constellation. Now, just between those two, you can already tell that the ecliptic must pass through Taurus over to Gemini. It doesn't go, you know, down through Betelgeuse and Orion, because Orion isn't a zodiac sign, right? The little dog, or sorry, the big dog, Canis Major, it's not a zodiac sign. So this already helps determine the path of the sun through the night sky. And I want to point out that every celestial body that's in the solar system, okay, they're all in a big disk going around the sun, they actually all go along the ecliptic. Okay, and that should make sense. Think about the last solar system diorama that you saw. And the Earth is here, the sun is here, and all the other planets are along the same disk of movement. I mean, you don't see Mars way up here, right? It's on the same plane as the sun. So that means that the planets and the moon also travel along the ecliptic. And here we go, right there, there's Mars. Tonight you can go outside and look for Mars by finding the winter circle, finding Aldebaran, which is a reddish star, and then identifying Castor and Pollux and looking for the little red star at the end of the horns of Aldebaran. Okay, now next is a very faint constellation, but it's there. Okay, I annotated it here because it's really hard to see, you guys. There's the stars, there's the annotation. Okay, it's really, there are no bright stars in this constellation. But if you know your zodiac, you go from Taurus, Gemini to Cancer. Okay, so this kind of X-shaped thing is Cancer, the crab. There's the core of the crab right there, and there's the claws that are extending away, or all the feet that are extending away. Okay, you know, pretty imaginative there. So again, the ecliptic goes through Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and what comes after Cancer? Leo. I'd like you to look at this nice big bright star here. That's the star Regulus, or the heart star of the lion. And that heart star is kind of like the point at the bottom of a backwards question mark, or a sickle. So taking this bright star, if you go up a little bit and then through this curve, okay, kind of like a backwards question mark. Or you might think of it as a sickle, right? If you're used to cutting wheat with a sickle, okay, I'm not, so I think of it as a backwards question mark. This backwards question mark, there's the heart of the lion, the mane of the lion, and then if you go back, here's the tail of the lion. See, so this triangle kind of makes the rump of the lion, the back haunches, the bottom leg, and then back here is the tail. So there we found the constellation Leo, also a zodiac sign. Okay, now so here's the zodiac. We have Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and then if we keep going down towards the horizon, we pass through, and we kind of gave it away here with this, the meteor shower that's happening right now, the Virginids. That is the constellation Virgo. Okay, didn't I tell you it's a really long constellation? So the sun actually takes 45 days to go all the way through Virgo. Okay, let me turn off the annotation again. But right here, the star Spica is a very bright star in the night sky. So when you go out tonight, start with the winter circle over here in the southwest and slowly make your way across the night sky, finding the backwards question mark. And then as you make your way down towards the horizon, Spica will be fairly obvious. Okay, it's only, when it gets dark tonight, it's only about 20 degrees off of the horizon. If you're looking at a star that's like 45 degrees off of the horizon, you're probably looking at Arcturus, okay? Arcturus, which is not a zodiac constellation. So let me turn Virgo back on. Now we have a pretty complete, at least a quarter of the entire zodiac that you know now, right? So you can go outside tonight with your friends or loved ones, or by yourself, of course, because this is really fun to connect with the cosmos, or children, and you can look through the zodiac, okay? So here's a little recap, and I will also share these resources through email. You will get the slide material. You'll also get kind of a worksheet like this to help you kind of test yourself on which one of these stars are. So here's the process: looking south, finding Orion, looking for Aldebaran of Taurus, Gemini, Castor, and Pollux, looking for Mars right there between them, then projecting that to the west to find Leo and Regulus, the faint stars of Cancer, and then finally Spica. Okay, so there's the blanks, and you can also do that yourself, filling in the blanks. Okay, So to recap a little bit, I went over some gear for stargazing to make a successful stargazing adventure for yourself. Then also setting your attention, what are you going to look at, setting your awareness to space, and making sure that you have a process that's fairly reliable for yourself and others that you're with. And that's really going to help you learn stargazing. So you can go outside at any night and look around and begin naming constellations, okay? Then also the importance of natural night skies, because we couldn't do any of this if we can't see the stars. Then also tonight's lesson was on the Zodiacal Constellations, where in the past we'd covered the winter circle and circumpolar constellations, okay? Next month, we'll probably look back towards north and look at other circumpolar constellations off of those that we already know, okay? Again, my name is Sammy Castonguay. I'm with Friends of the Owyhee and Treasure Valley Community College. And I'm also an advocate for night skies, an advocate for stars, an advocate for astronomy. So thank you very much for joining. I really hope that you value the constellations that you've learned, but also the process around stargazing, okay? So have fun tonight and keep looking up to see what you can see. I'll stick around, of course, for some questions and answer, and you're welcome to also stick around for any answers that you might be, questions and answers you might be interested in. Okay. So if you want to use the chat, you can use the chat for questions. I will look at that as soon as I can open it. Okay. Let's see, I'll move Stargate. Oh, thank you, Pat. Looks like he recommends the Star Guide on the iPhone is an excellent app. Oh yes, and thank you for mentioning that it has a red color filter for your night vision. That's right. Stellarium does have the red setting as well. I'm sorry for not mentioning that. But yes, the Star Guide for iPhone could also be a useful app. I'm not sure of the price there. It could be free. That's always a good price. Okay. So thank you for that, Pat. Lisa asks, will the recordings be available to review later to practice? And if I'm not mistaken, I think we are recording. Okay. I totally intended to say at the very beginning that we're going to record this for availability later. And having realized that it didn't say that, I think we are recording, and we do intend to make the recording available so you can practice. Yeah, thanks for that question, Lisa. And then Geraldine, thank you, says very helpful. And Pat, thank you. We are recording, Catalin says, thank you. Good. So if there are any additional questions, I don't see any others in the chat, but if you'd like to unmute and share your name, and then I could answer your question. Anybody looking for a question? Wow, it's a quiet group. Okay, it looks like we have quite a few folks that are dropping off. They're like, nah, I don't got no questions. See you later. Okay, and that's just fine. If you do have questions, I'm always available through email. You'll get an email review of this material, and you can just reach right back out and ask, hey, what is Friends of the Owyhee about? Hey, have you ever been to this place? Hey, did you see that weird UFO the other night? Nah, no UFOs. But, you know, we're an open book. Please, you know, questions about stargazing, questions about the Owyhee, we're open for all of it. Okay, well, seeing no additional questions, I think I'll let everybody go for their evening. Thank you all very much. And we will meet here again on May 19th for the next presentation. It'll be advertised through the same conduits that you heard of this presentation. So whether that's on the Friends of the Owyhee website or your local library, you'll see the next one available. Okay, thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.